We have not spent enough time and effort on the soft skill building in India, which becomes very important in a business. So those kind of things require the hiring people with the right attitude who are willing to learn. I think that's more important, and we do have enough of this in India. I think it's not a big problem there. What is a problem is the way we teach in India. It's very pedagogical. We need to let people explore much more, and these kind of facilities are there in Western universities more than India, where the curriculum is not so rigid. The professors are not so rigid. It's important for the professors and the administration in a university to also allow that freedom.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ashutosh Upadhyay, and welcome to Designing Tomorrow with Ashutosh. Throughout this series so far, we've been honored to have conversations with people in different industries such as education, cryptocurrency, AI. We've had conversations with people in media, and through those insights, we understand how it actually looks like from the vantage point of somebody actually making decisions for tomorrow. And with that in mind, I wanted to cover an industry that is not often talked about, but is vitally important for the health of any industrial nation. And that is material sciences, right? And to that end, today we are really honored to have Mr. Samit Sen in conversation with us. Mr. Jain is the Managing Director of Plus Advanced Technologies, which is a material science, research, and manufacturing company. It's a pleasure to have you in conversation with us, Mr. Jain.
Thank you, Ashutosh. A pleasure for me too.
Start करते हैं sir. Just to begin everything off, to kick things off, I want to understand, take us through your background. Where did you do your education? How you got into this industry in the first place?
Well, it's a very interesting story. I did my master's in physics. That was my passion. And then I later did my electrical engineering master's, but then moved into material science. And the reason really for that was that I was working in the US after my master's in Los Angeles for a couple of years. And I figured that, no, I think I need to get back to India and do something there. So that made the transition from US back into India almost 20 years back. And at that point of time, there were very few industries and business opportunities also.
Yes.
My father had started a material science business, and I thought, okay, let me take this opportunity to grow this further. And that got me interested in trying to grow a business in India and look at opportunities that could be for the future. And to me and my wife, maybe, environment was something that we really were caring about and cared for, and would have loved to do something that could help improve the environment. And we picked up energy as the space that we can work in. And today, if you look at it, it forms the cusp of almost anything. You need energy for doing things, you need energy for maintaining temperatures. So that's how we got into doing material science, picking up energy as an opportunity to grow.
That's very interesting. So, taking off from energy and considering that my background is in AI, and AI very famously is very energy hungry, right? So, basically, the top AI labs are now in the process of making data centers that will require more electricity than cities. So, Oracle is in talks to open like a 15 gigawatt data center. And so, energy utilization, energy efficiency is something that is apparently extremely important in today's day and age, right? So with that in mind, and global warming, can you tell me about the energy solutions that you guys have, that you are working on in your company, and what kind of use case that you actually see happening in the real world regarding that?
So how do we store energy? So it's through the materials that we make. And to make it a little easy for all of you viewers, what we look at are materials which are called phase change materials. So these materials change their phase from solid to liquid, liquid to solid, and hence they are called as phase change materials, or PCMs.
Okay.
In the process of this change of phase, you are able to release or store latent heat. And heat is the cusp of any energy that you require. You either need it for cooling or you need it for heating. So these materials can store heat at different temperatures. And that's what our expertise is, to design materials at different temperatures, right from, let's say, minus 70 degrees Celsius to plus 150 degrees Celsius. We have a plethora of these materials, about 45 different materials in this range, which can store the heat at that particular temperature. And when you talk of AI or you talk of data centers, all of these data centers generate a lot of heat and they need cooling. Your chips have to be maintained at the right temperature, right? And how can I look at cooling in a more sustainable way? There is enough cold that is probably available in the environment in cold countries. Can I store that cold and use it for cooling? Can I find ways to remove the heat from these materials that you have in a data center much faster? So those are the kind of things that we are working on in terms of trying to store the heat and provide the cooling at the right temperature.
So that's very fascinating when you talk about storing heat and storing cold. मैंने ऐसे सोचा नहीं था. तो फॉर एग्जाम्पल अब जैसे मैं देखता हूँ कि जब मैं अपने फ़ोन पे गेम्स खेलता हूँ, राइट, व्हेन आई प्ले गेम्स ऑन माई फ़ोन ओवर हीट्स, राइट, एंड देन आई गेट अ एरर मैसेज सेइंग कि योर डिवाइस इज सपोज टू बी मेंटेन्ड एट दिस टेम्परेचर, उससे ओवर हीट हो रहा है, तो वील जस्ट स्टॉप ऑल द प्रोसेसेस, राइट. एंड सो बेसिकली ईच काइंड ऑफ हार्डवेयर दैट वी यूज has an optimum temperature जिसमें वो काम करना उसका ideal range होता है. And what you're saying is that you make devices or you make materials that उसका जो रेंज आप बता रहे हो माइनस नेगेटिव टेम्परेचर से लेके पॉजिटिव 100 प्लस 150 डिग्री सेल्सियस तक के टेम्परेचर्स के, तो यू कैन देन बी लाइक ओके इफ दिस मटेरियल रिक्वायर्स लेट्स से 80 डिग्री सेल्सियस विच इज द ऑप्टिमम टेम्परेचर फॉर इट, तो वी विल गिव इट अ मटेरियल जो कि वो हीट स्टोर करके रखेगा और वो टेम्परेचर कूलिंग वाला स्टोर करके रखेगा और उसको उसी पे रखेगा.
बिल्कुल. So if you look at it, I'll give you a very simple example. What we are doing in Europe, for instance. You probably read the news, right? The last couple of weeks, Europe had temperatures, Western Europe, countries like Netherlands, UK, France, they had temperatures going up to 38, 39, 40 degrees Celsius for a few days. But at the same time, their nighttime temperatures stayed at 18 or 20 degrees Celsius. So you have a great temperature differential, 18 or 20 degrees at night, 40 degrees during the daytime. Now just imagine if I could store all of that cold, which is at night at 18 degrees, and use it to cool the day, which is at 40 degrees, I literally have what I call free cooling.
Yes.
So we have these materials which change phase at 22 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
So if I have this 22 degree melting point material lined in my roof in the building or in my room in the ceiling tiles, for example, and if I throw in a cold air at 18 degrees Celsius at night, what is it going to do? It's going to freeze this 22 degree material because my material is melting at 22 degrees Celsius. Below 22, it's going to be frozen.
Achha.
If I have 18 degree air, it's going to freeze this 22 degree material. During the day, when my temperature crosses 22 degrees Celsius, let's say it goes to 25, 26, 28, what's going to happen? The hot air in the room is going to melt this material. If the heat from the room melts the material, the temperature in the room is going to fall because the heat has been taken away by this material that was there in the ceiling.
Achha.
And therefore, I would need less air conditioning. I have therefore managed to reduce my air conditioning requirement by storing the cold at night and using it in the daytime.
I see that something like that being super useful. Like for example, last year, we had like really bad cold in Delhi and then really bad heat. So I think in the lowest temperature in December was 2 degrees Celsius, and in the summers it went to 52. So we have a temperature delta of 50 degrees Celsius का मेरा temperature delta है, right?
That's right. So in those situations, if you want to store seasonal heat, we are working on those technologies also, and those are termed as long duration energy storage. So what the example I just gave you was something for the day and night, right? The same day you store it and use it the next day.
Yeah.
But now when you talk of winters and summers, I can actually store a lot of cold in winters and then use that cold 6 months later in summers. And there are technologies which are being worked upon now, a lot of it in Europe, and we, along with a couple of universities in India, are looking at doing projects to be able to look at solutions that are for long duration storage.
So now with that in mind, considering कि ये जो solution है, that is something that I think इसके use cases are in multiple industries, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
तो Can you just take me through what are the biggest adopters of your technology right now? What industries or what use cases?
So, like with any new technology, it takes a while for people to believe in it and adopt it.
Huh.
However, one of the most commonly used case in India today is for food transport and pharmaceutical transport. So India is considered the pharmacy of the world today, and
Yeah.
after COVID, more so. People have realized that we can do a lot of things, and the pharma exports in India is growing manyfold.
Yes. Yes.
India is exporting vaccines and medicines from here to Africa, to Latin America, to Europe, to US. And the duration is almost 4 to 5 days. They go by air, and you need to maintain temperature for vaccines, which could be as low as -20 or +228 or +22 for certain medicines. So that's one application area where a lot of adoption is being done by the pharmaceutical companies in India.
Achha.
And the other area that we are looking at, which is getting adopted in India, is on the agri side. So again, the farmers today, right? They do a lot of distress selling, for example.
Exactly.
You have tomatoes being sold at 1 rupee a kg because they just have to dispose it off the same day because tomatoes can rot very soon.
And तो फिर ये सारा cost तो farmer bear कर रहा है, right?
Cost for
The cost of selling these products are such a low margin, like
Yeah,
negligible
absolutely.
margin है, to be honest. So the farmer is selling these products at a loss to him.
Right. So if I can enable the farmer to, let's say, have a refrigerator at his doorstep,
Huh.
he'll be able to store those tomatoes for 3-4 days or 5 days and sell it during the course of the whole week instead of trying to dispose it off the same day. Right. So how am I doing it? I am using solar to generate cold,
Huh.
which is only available for 6 to 8 hours a day. In those 6 to 8 hours, I generate the coal that I need for the balance 15 hours. And I store it in my material. So I'm moving away from lithium ion batteries also, which is one of the most inefficient ways of storing energy, right? Because if I'm going to convert heat to electricity, then store it as a DC form in a battery,
battery,
then
yeah.
convert it back into alternating current, and then convert it into heat or cold, I am doing several conversions. But in my material, I'm storing heat as heat. And I am able to maintain the temperature during the night time when there is no sun available. So the farmer is able to extend the duration of his storage and sell the product over a period of time.
Because you see a lot of these reports India mein hoke because the government takes surplus grain and they have to maintain a stock कि मेरा minimum wheat का इतना stock होना चाहिए, rice का इतना होना चाहिए, vegetables का इतना होना चाहिए, and then they're not maintained properly and then they go bad.
In fact, we would love to do this if it's possible sometimes, where even grain needs to be stored at the right temperature. Otherwise,
Exactly.
you will not be able to store it for months together. You need to store it at 25 degrees Celsius. Let's say you need controlled humidity. Now, 25 degrees Celsius in India is not easy. We are a hot country. 6 months in a year, the temperatures are beyond 35-40 degrees Celsius in most parts of the country.
Yeah.
But at the same time, same example which I gave about Europe, we do have states where the nighttime temperature is cooler.
Yeah.
So I could probably look at storing that nighttime cold in these grain houses also to extend the life of the grain and prevent rottage of the grain.
That's very fair. Because that's something that actually farmers को बहुत उनके पूरे supply chain में अगर तुम्हारा core product ही destroy हो जा रहा है, then that is basically just gonna मतलब barrel down everywhere throughout the supply chain, right? So now in that's a very fascinating thing that we can do. What do you see कि अभी सबसे बड़ा hurdle of us as a nation adopting this technology that we know our farmers need, right?
So the challenge really is anything to do with the farmers needs a lot of government support. Farmers are people who don't have money. Of course, there is the whole class of rich farmers that India has. Leave them aside. 80% of the farmers still don't have money or capital available to invest in such technologies.
Bilkul.
So that hurdle needs to be crossed in some way. Can they be facilitated to get loans in a much easier way? We also need to factor in that some loans may have to be written off, but I think all of it needs to be done. Otherwise, the farmer will never move out from where he is today. He needs access to these technologies at a much cheaper rate.
Huh.
And it's
Precisely.
the chicken and egg story once again, right? A technology becomes cheap only when it's adopted widely.
Hmm.
So until that adoption happens, the prices will not come down.
Yeah.
And for that adoption to happen, the farmers need to be supported drastically. So a lot of policy changes at that level,
Yeah.
and ease of farmers getting loans, or even companies trying to interface with let's say self-help groups and
Yes.
the technology
Huh.
needs to be done.
So I'm now considering this from the perspective of a founders, right? So let's say I am a 20-year-old college graduate. I'm really good at my field. I've developed similar to you a technology that can really help real world use case, right? तो मेरा R&D पे मैंने टाइम और अपनी एनर्जी अपने आप से खुद से इन्वेस्ट करके मैंने बना दिया. Then comes to actually selling that technology to government so that they can because certain technologies का पहला adopter government को ही होना पड़ेगा because of simply the capital involved, right? And also knowledge transfer भी तो करना है farmers को. So इन दोनों processes में how do you balance this? How do you see this happening? What would you want to accelerate even further? कि क्या हो जाए जो कि आपको लगता है कि हमारे देश के farmers को इंटरनेशनली बराबर लेवल का कर लेंगे. What is the thing that we can change today, or we can urge our governments to do, or whatever?
I think education is extremely important. The farmers need to be educated with newer technologies, which is not happening. Even if you look at institutions where the farmers can go to, the various krishi bhavans that have been set up at various government level, at districts that are there, or even places like the ITIs which are there, they are pretty ancient today.
Yes.
A lot of effort and money needs to be spent in upgrading the kind of infrastructure these training places have, where farmers can go to and can learn about newer technology. So that is something that is lacking substantially. Second, we are a country with diverse languages. So that's the other thing where technologies like you are working on, for instance, AI can play a great role in
Yes.
terms of translating material into local languages, local dialects for the farmers to understand. So that's something, if done, I think farmers will become more aware. Of course, with technology, they are also aware of what's happening in the world today, but that effort needs to go in.
So I understand from the way your technology works, I understand कि इसके not only farmers is just one use case, right? I can see its use case in like a data center. I can see its use case in industries जिसमें उनका, for example, food, temperature and food just go hand in hand, right? Some things need to be kept frozen, some things need to be kept completely warm, otherwise they will go ripe or whatever. So ऐसे case में I'm pretty sure you will have certain technologies that work in the industry also, that जिसका basically end user एक industry है, where capital is not an issue, where speed of decision making is not an issue. For example, I think food is something like that. So can you take us a bit through that कि I'm assuming packaging and stuff like that में जो heat का जो process होता है उसमें temperature maintain करना ज़रूरी है, right? And so take us through those technologies and how they work in the field, and how do you see their adoption increasing as time goes on?
You're right. The industry is the easier target than the consumer or the farmer. And heat in the in process industries is a lot of waste heat. If I can store that waste heat, and we are working on such projects also where waste heat, let's say at 120, 130 degrees Celsius, is being captured in our material. I can capture the waste heat in my material, which melts at 130 degrees Celsius. So you have hot air being thrown out at 120, 130. The material will melt because its melting point is 130. And then just kind of visualize, if I pass cold water through that material in some way, I have a heat exchanger. I pass cold water through that material. The cold water is going to become hot because cold water, let's say 20, 30, 40 degrees Celsius, is going to pass through a 130 degree material. Therefore, there's going to be a heat exchange that will happen and the water will heat up. So I have preheated the water to a much higher temperature for use in the industry itself. So these kind of applications in process industries, in chemical industries, in paper industry are areas that we are working on and trying to see how to help industries reduce their electricity electricity consumption, which happens either through natural gas or through petroleum sources today, and move them to trying to capture the heat that their processes have been generating,
Yes.
and reuse that heat over and over again.
That's very fascinating, because see, that's a dilemma that I struggle with myself. Because I think I talked to the Bhashini CEO when you were talking about the different languages and farmers, right? And that's something that I've been struggling with myself, because क्या है, I want to develop different languages के models, Indian languages के, local languages के models that people can use. So if it's a language like Odia and other smaller languages, they don't have a lot of speakers. उनके speakers भी ज़्यादा हों तो but उनका written material इतना नहीं है. And AI model is trained on the content you have, right? And so basically then that incurs a cost of actually making that model. ठीक है. So then I was balancing that, and the advice I was given was कि पहले इंग्लिश के मॉडल बनाओ, उन्हें बेचो, उससे जो पैसा कमाओगे, then you do social service, and then you do help that. And but that's a dilemma that, you know, that I as a founder, as a first time founder with no experience, you know, I'm struggling with कि which route should I go? Should I go make a model that क्या वो अच्छा हो जिसमें मैं अपने resources लगाऊं, and maybe I don't get paid from it. Right?
No, absolutely. I think that's where our country is lacking a lot. We all know it. The amount of money being pumped into R&D in our country, either by the government or the industry, is very low.
Yes, yes.
That needs to change drastically for such new things to come up, whether it's language models in different languages, or whether it's technologies like ours that we are trying to promote. So I think that has to be at the policy level. We have to focus on R&D and not just look at revenues or profits being generated in the short term, because science and technology needs a much larger gestation period for almost anything.
Yeah.
Which countries in Europe and let's say the US and maybe some of the countries like South Korea, Taiwan, or even Singapore, they have invested in for decades together to be able to reap the benefit today.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be kind of sounding as if the businesses that have become billion-dollar businesses in India, they are more from, not from the technology point of view. They are good entrepreneurial ventures that have happened, but they have not necessarily developed a lot of science and technology.
Very true. Very true. And just to take an example of a company, because my knowledge is in AI, just to give perspective to people, OpenAI started in 2016. ChatGPT came out in 2022. In that, आप सोचो 2016 to 2022, अगर मैं किसी से बोलूं कि I will be for 6 years, you will not know what I am working on. You have to give me $200 million, and आपको कुछ नहीं पता चलेगा कि even if I can sell the moment they came out with ChatGPT, the CEO said कि we don't know how to monetize this technology. We just know something cool exists, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you see that working in India? If I assemble a team of the top most cracked engineers, मैं 10 ले आऊँ कि हम लोग इसी कमरे में बैठे रहेंगे, आप प्लीज हमें पैसे दे दो, तो do you see that happening? And then as a person in the industry, do you see कि people who are at the top, who have the financial capacity to spare, right, they can make funds that promote this kind of technology, because वो फिर अंत में इंडिया का ही तो रहेगा.
So I think things are beginning to change. We still have hope. So there are a lot of the newer venture capitalists, family offices that are coming up and are looking at, you know, so-called deep technology. Although when they talk of deep tech, they're still talking of, let's say, on the software side of AI and all. But I think materials and sciences are beginning to get a lot of attention. There will be it will be a slow process before things change the way it happens in Europe, where funding is available very easily. Anybody can set up businesses around material science, around newer technologies, and they do get funded much more easily. In India, that's a challenge, I agree.
So if a child comes to you for advice and they want to open like a deep tech hardware startup in India, what genuine piece of advice would you give them?
I think patience is something that they should have. That's one. And given the fact that you are operating in India, we have to kind of work within the limitations that the country provides. So you need to live within your means in the initial phases, try and do things in a bootstrapped way perhaps, and then raise funds rather than immediately going out and raising funds, because the moment you raise funds, your business models will tend to change because investors want returns immediately.
Exactly.
So you need to be a little patient before you get out there and raise, let's say, your funding. So bootstrapping is a good way to go. And also the fact that one has to respect that you are living in a society which thinks differently.
Yes.
So therefore you need to take people along in a much more cohesive way than let's say the Western countries, where you could just hire and fire immediately, right? You don't have money, you lay off people today. You have money, you hire people tomorrow.
Yeah.
That doesn't work in India very easily. So you need to kind of work through all of it in a way that the society here will take it in a nicer way and allow your business to continue.
Because see, you're the right person to talk about this, because I think you raised money from Tata Capital's Innovation Fund, right? And can you just take us through that process? And I just want to learn from you as a person who might want to go that route, or किसी भी बच्चे को करना है अगर वैसा. So what are the tips and tricks and advice you would give to them? कि just keep this in mind. If you want to go to the funding route, if you are sure कि तुम्हारा business model के लिए required है, what are the advice you would give to them?
I think choose your investors very wisely. People who believe in what you're doing. And I think Tata Capital Innovations Fund, who invested in us, they had their mantra very clear. They wanted to invest in science and technology driven businesses which were Indian origin, in terms of technology being completely Indian, and were in the brick and mortar space where they were building things.
Okay.
So all the companies that this fund chose was companies like us, where we were manufacturing. So you need to go to the right investor and not just take money from anybody who's willing to give you money, because make sure that they have a little longer horizon.
Because that's interesting, because as a person because if you're bootstrapped, you're so starved for cash. Anybody who just dangles okay, $1 million, you're like, please give me money, I'll tap dance for you, whatever you want me to do. But yeah, and this is advice that I've been given from multiple people, is choose your investors wisely. And I think zaruri hai, because I think their expectations of when your business will start giving returns might actually affect your core business model, might actually affect R&D also.
True, because these things need a lot of money for R&D, and you cannot be always sure that your research is going to be successful, that you will get the right material at the right temperature, in our case, for example, or you'll get the material which is at the right price point that the industry can afford. So all of this needs to be factored in, and therefore you have a much larger gestation period. Almost any materials company in the world, the large ones in the world, like the DuPonts and the Dows, for example, they've been there for hundreds of years, and none of their products were, just a 1 year manufacturing and research and development time frame. They all took 10 to 15 years before they hit the market in a big way.
To that point, if you're in charge of a company like that, how should you look at incoming capital, R&D expenses, and कि अच्छा मुझे clients भी ढूंढने हैं, अच्छा I need to also get some sources of funding. How do you actually, मतलब in your personal perspective, आप इसे कैसे देखते हो?
I think it's important that when you're looking at these materials or these kind of businesses, can I find a adopter right from day one who is willing to work together? Because you need constant feedback on how the materials are performing or how the technology needs to be tweaked to meet their requirements. So the adopter should be with you from day one. If that's possible, that's the most ideal case. Then you know that you have a market for what you're working on. And you will therefore be able to focus your energies much better, and don't spread yourself too thin. We made that mistake. We tried to work on too many materials at too many use cases, as we discover, right?
Yeah.
You need energy, heat or cold in every industry, whether it's food, agri, whether it is building temperature control, whether it is waste heat recovery, whether it is solar heat storage. You need heat or cold everywhere, and if you try and focus on every application, you tend to lose your money.
Yes.
So it's important to pick the right application. At the same time, it's important, I think, to keep playing with the other applications. Otherwise, you don't know which application is going to be successful quicker. So you need to balance that. It's very tricky, and I think it only comes with a bit of experience. Once you've burnt your fingers and you realize that you're running out of cash, then you start conserving cash. You have to make sure that you are able to get payments from your vendors, from your customers on time. So those kind of things are important in these businesses. Cash flow management becomes very important.
So if I'm in charge of a deep tech company, what success metrics should I keep in mind? Considering R&D is an important part of my company, how do you personally?
I think probably 20 to 25% of your revenues over a period of let's say 2-3 years should come from newer products. That's very important. Otherwise, you will even lose the edge for your existing products.
That's very insightful.
So make sure that you have a product which is selling in the market. You have started thinking of something else for the next 2 or 3 years. If you are going to live on just one product, every product has its life cycle, right? So it may get replaced, and there are many people who will start copying what you're doing. So you have to be prepared for that, and the only way you can do it is by constantly investing in newer products that you are making.
In terms of, now we've talked about the products, we've talked about technology. How do you think about talent? Because R&D is such an core part of your business, right? How do you think about talent? Do you think India has enough talent in the industry that you
India has a lot of talent. It is getting access to that talent, which is very tough. In sense that when you're looking for somebody, you tend to go to the IITs or the tier 1 institutes like BITS and others, but not necessarily that these people are going to be stable. They are very aspirational, but at the same time, I think if you go to the tier 2 universities, you will get a lot of people with a lot of talent and who are more loyal. It's important for a company to be able to retain talent for a longer period of time. Because a lot of effort and time is spent on training these people, because nobody from the college is industry ready in India.
Exactly.
We need to teach them a lot of things, and it could be just as simple as how to speak or how to write an email. We have not spent enough time and effort on the soft skill building in India, which becomes very important in a business. So those kind of things require the hiring people with the right attitude who are willing to learn. I think that's more important, and we do have enough of this in India. I think it's not a big problem there. What is a problem is the way we teach in India. It's very pedagogical. We need to let people explore much more, and these kind of facilities are there in Western universities more than India, where the curriculum is not so rigid. The professors are not so rigid. It's important for the professors and the administration in a university to also allow that freedom. And we are governed by very strict rules that universities have. And therefore, the freedom for the child to learn or to explore different things is lacking. And therefore, they are not able to create new things because they have never... I mean, I'll give you an example. I was in Netherlands, and in one of the universities, and in a mechanical engineering lab, there were so many cars actually just opened up, which no Indian university can claim about. Right, so how do you expect a mechanical engineer to design a car without actually having seen what a car is from inside? I don't think even the IITs have a car which is completely opened up, and not just a car but several cars. Right, so people create a lot. There's a lot of interdisciplinary learning that happens outside India, which the Indian universities don't offer.
So basically, it's a matter of us also developing the ecosystem. And what we're seeing right now these days is that India has capital. It's not as if we're a capital start country in terms of startups. But is that ecosystem where private industry works with education institutes, works with the government? If you were in charge of this entire ecosystem, like, what are the first 3 steps you would want to take?
I think I would immediately, make funding much more easier to get. We have been doing projects which are funded by Department of Science and Technology, and it takes months to get that money out from there because our processes are very long and cumbersome.
Yeah.
It is very difficult to always succeed, right? So the moment your project fails, it becomes very difficult to get the money out from the government. Now the government has to, I would change that. I mean, let the project fail. It's only 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 that are successful. But until those 7 failures happen, we will not learn and we will not be able to create better products.
Because like a recent example of a success in that regard, I consider, is the amount of money IIT Madras's incubation cell is making from, I think, Ether Energy.
That's right.
And so it's we have an example of something working in front of us. Ki, okay, they put a bet on this company that was innovative, and I actually attended a conference where the CTO of Ether Energy was speaking. And one thing that they said that I found really fascinating was they said कि हम design से लेके software or hardware, we do it in house. And I feel कि that's a good chunk of our वो is in R&D हमारा budget. तो they showed a slide कि हमारा R&D में काफी अच्छा budget जाता है. And just to see innovators like that succeeding just makes us as a part of that community feel okay. Now that we have a roadmap of you can actually go ahead and build that thing. Do you see this actually panning out and becoming a more successful model throughout the country?
I think so. We've all heard of domino effects, right? So there are a lot of Ether kind of companies in different incubation centers across the country today.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of time. I really don't know whether it's 5 years or 10 years, but we will see many such companies coming out. IIT Madras in particular has done, I think, pretty well in terms of incubating a lot of space
Very
companies also today.
Yes.
So it is important that the money that companies give back to institutions like the IITs or the incubation centers that have been set up is now fueled back into the system to fund several more companies. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know the number, but IIT incubation center would have funded more than 100 odd companies in the last few years, right?
Yes.
And only 2 or 3 of them will become as successful as, so that's the kind of percentage you're looking at for that success to happen, and it will change.
But that is like the venture capital business model. Like
Absolutely.
they spend money on like 10 companies and 2 make up for like 20 of them, right?
That's right. That happens everywhere.
So okay, so then basically we just need to change our perception of risk as a country.
Perception of risk and also definition of success. I mean, if a company does not do that well, that doesn't mean it's not been successful, right? They have learned a lot. They have learned what not to do, for example. So, and the career of those people don't end there. They go on to do newer things which they'll do better. So I think it's important to realize that failure is looked down in our country, and that has to change, even at the family levels.
So basically, I feel that in going through your company's literature, right, that I think I saw a quote from you where it said something like, create an India for the world, and something like that. And I feel that is something that a lot of startups in AI are trying to do. You make a product that you can sell globally, and with that money you build a team here, you train the people here. What is the biggest roadblock for that? Because you have centers, you have partnerships across in Netherlands and different countries. Usually अगर मैं एक छोटा स्टार्टअप हूँ, मैं इंटरनेशनल अगर अपना वो करना चाह रहा हूँ, how should I approach it? What is the heuristic you would give me कि आप ऐसे करके you should approach these like international? How do I get an international presence in?
So I can give you the example of what we did.
Okay.
So we figured that our products are not selling easily in India, but there's probably a better opportunity outside of India. So we chose Europe. And the reason we chose Europe over US was we thought there are multiple opportunities there, as it's a conglomerate of 30 odd countries.
Exactly.
It's closer to India. Time zones are easier to handle. So that got us to choose Europe over the US. And then we the embassies or the missions that these European countries have in India are very active. I would encourage people to go meet the economic cell in these embassies. Once you do that, they tend to connect you to the various players in their countries which could be related to what you do.
Okay.
And it becomes easier, the dialogue starts, and you're able to identify people whom you could work with or you could collaborate with. So I would really encourage all these startup founders, if they're looking at diversifying in terms of geography, to interact with various missions that these countries have, and everybody is looking at India today in some way or the other.
Yes.
And they are very open to helping you. So I think that's the one of the easiest way to try and get connected to the right set of people in those countries. And of course, with access to the internet, one is able to, and with almost everybody having social media, LinkedIn, Instagram accounts, you're able to then search and then do that connect otherwise also. But that's one way.
That is actually super useful for me, and that is something that I will now start actually doing myself. In terms of actually your company, so you started when you were initially on your own, and now I think you're part of a conglomerate, right? How does that work in your day-to-day sort of working? कुछ change होता है क्या? And what are the benefits of being under that umbrella, having those resources? What?
So I think at some point of time we also need to realize, or the people who are starting new companies, I think one piece of advice I'll give them is, try and build an institution rather than just trying to look for exits. And this is what changed drastically when we went from Tata Capital, which was a venture capital funding, to becoming a subsidiary under Carborundum Universal, which was a company which has existed for 70 years, and the whole group, which is the Murugappa group, has existed for over 150 years, right? So when you associate with these organizations, of course, they come with a lot of legacy, but there is a lot of learning that you get from their past experiences. Carborundum is a material science company. They believe in making materials matter. That's their tagline. So it also opened up opportunities for us to interact with their R&D scientists and their R&D groups. We had access to technologies, we had access to infrastructure that these companies have, and therefore it helped us improve our product line also. The other benefit such large conglomerates bring is putting in place structures. So when you want to create an institution, something that should last beyond our lifetime, I want my company to continue beyond me, right? Yes. So processes become very important. And these larger organizations help you put in place those processes that can continue beyond you. Because they have that perspective of that legacy, right? That's right.
So they're not just limited to the next year or the next 6 months.
Absolutely. And, there's this very interesting book called Same as Ever. I don't know if you've read it, by Morgan Housel. It kind of says, if you look at chocolates that are selling, Kit Kat, or if you look at glucose biscuits, they have been there for generations. There's a reason for that. Or if you look at products like IKEA, which sells, IKEA hasn't changed their products for the entire 40-50 years. The same Billy bookcase which used to sell in 1960 sells today. Or their packaging, for instance. So it becomes important to see that what lasts longer. And it's not necessarily that you need to purposefully keep changing. So I think it's important to have the insight that large legacy companies have, because what has made them what they are is important in the science space.
That's very fascinating. That's completely contrary to what a lot of startup, gyan is. You move fast and break things, but you have to, I think
you have to strike the balance. The world is changing. We don't know what's in store 5 years later, so you can't become a white elephant. You need to be agile and need to be constantly aware, but not necessarily always change everything.
That is actually fascinating. So now, now that we have gained your insight on how you think of these things, in your actual day-to-day work, how do you divide your time between different parts of your business? How much do you spend on marketing versus finance? Like how like this, I'm just very curious.
I think I will draw an analogy from, let's say, Hindu mythology, right? While many religions have one god, Hinduism, you cannot name a single god, right? You have several gods. When you need money, you pray to Lakshmi. When you need knowledge, you are praying to Saraswati. So it's important for entrepreneurs to realize that it's not necessarily dividing time every day. At different point of your career, of your journey, certain things become more important. So it's important to focus on that, and it could be doing marketing for days together, or it could be doing R&D for days together. So I think dividing time is not the way to look at it. It is what does your business need at that point of time. For instance, we are today saying, okay, let us just go a little slow on R&D, and let us make sure that our cash flows are right and we sell what we have. So it's important to be able to figure out what you need at that point of time.
Because the whole point of a priority is when two things are equally important, right?
Yeah. So I think it'll get determined by one, partly what you like to do, and therefore you hire somebody else for doing something else that you don't like. But you cannot ignore any of these parts, whether it's sales, R&D, marketing, purchase, right? So all of it is important for a business. Again, the same kind of an analogy, right? Which part of the car is more important? You just cannot ignore any. Even if any one part is missing, you can't drive your car.
Yeah, that's very well put. So, yeah, because we as founders, we tend to have, I see, especially when we're in the nascent stages of our business, I always see this, that our businesses tend to become a reflection of us, including the strengths and the weaknesses. So if I like to work on code, I will just be coding and adding new features. I won't be selling my software at all. I won't be talking to customers. I won't be packaging it. And that's what I see in my own business, is sometimes when I'm more interested in coding, I'm just adding features that nobody is asking for. And sometimes when I'm selling I'm focused on marketing, I'm not working on code. I don't want to work on code as well.
See, I think it's important to realize that business, the purpose of business is to generate money or to generate profits, and to be able to plow back those profits either into your own business or for some social purpose, let's say. So it's we cannot just, again, look at, if you like coding and if you're doing coding, it does not solve the purpose. Is your business going to be generating money, or there may be a longer gestation period for that money to get generated, but at some point it needs to start doing that to be able to become self-sustaining.
So I think that as founders, the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is right for my business? Not what do I want to do, but what does my business require right now?
That's right. I mean, let's say Tata's made a Nano not because Ratan Tata may have wanted to drive a Nano, right? He had several fancy cars which he used to own and drive. You do something which the world needs. It's not necessarily something that you need. Of course, it starts with what you like, but as you grow and you want to build an institution, then you have to keep pivoting to the products that can sell and that can keep afloat. Because if your business dies, you're also giving away so many employment. So many people working. You want their families to be happy, right? So you need to generate funds to be able to do that.
So basically, on that note, I like to end these conversations with like a rapid fire round. You've given us a lot of great insights, and particularly I would be actually using a lot of them. So now with that in mind, let me ask you this question. What was something you used to worry a lot when you were early into running this company that you feel is not important, or that you worried incorrectly?
I won't say incorrectly, but it is having money to pay salaries every month is something that you keep worrying about.
Yes. I am there right now. Okay. So on that note, what is the most brutally honest piece of advice you would give to yourself when you were starting that, when you were initially in this company?
I think I would say that it is important to be patient. And as my father used to keep saying, it's very important to be lucky. And to be lucky, you need to be on the dancing floor for Lady Luck to dance with you. So you have to keep doing things. And somewhere something will always click. So one should not give up hope.
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever gotten?
The worst piece of advice? That's a tough one. But I think short-term goals. every investor wants quick returns, and people think of it in short term. Always try and think long term.
What was the best risk you've taken in your life?
Best risk, I think I just moved back from the US to India not knowing what to do, but it turned out well.
It sounds it really did. And lastly, what's the toughest part of your job?
Managing people. As you grow, you have lots of people, lots of egos, and you have to get everyone to work together.
Okay, that's great. And on that note, we will. I'm really glad. It was an awesome conversation. It was an honor having you on here, just being so candid about your experiences. And I hope to have another conversation with you soon.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Very nice to see you, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.